Welcome in. It's time for another edition of the Front Office Dispatch here on the SDH Network, presented by Kaiser Permanente. I'm Jason Longshore, and I wanted to take a little bit deeper look into today's press conference with Atlanta United's Chief Soccer Officer, Chris Henderson, closing out the 2025 season, looking ahead to 2026 and beyond. Pulled some different clips. Go watch the whole press conference. It is absolutely worth your time. It's at the Atlanta United YouTube channel and on their X account as well. But I wanted to share a few things that I thought deserved a little extra highlight. And we're going to start with two questions, two clips. The first one from Donnell Suggs of the Atlanta Voice, and the second from Felipe Cardenas of the Athletic. The second one is the answer to a question about kind of what the changes on the sporting side are going to look like after the 2025 season going into 2026. Here's Chris Henderson with answers to Donnell's question that you will hear and Felipe's question.
Earlier you said that it wasn't the kind of season that you wanted, which obviously it's not. If you could talk directly to the fan base, one of the best in the league, what would you kind of tell them about this year?
Yeah, I would say we're a big club, Atlanta United. We have a tremendous following. Our fans are incredible, the support we have. I feel like the players in this organization have a really close connection with our fans. We saw that with the support throughout the year, even when we weren't getting results. I would say we are going to do everything we can in this off season, whether it be improving in the behind the scenes support staff, bringing in coaching staff who can bring a contender to Atlanta and what the fans deserve. We have tremendous support from Arthur Blank and our ownership group, and we need to take advantage of that and make sure that we are a successful club. To it first, when we land on our coaching staff, that collaboration needs to be worked on immediately. And very important how each department works to support the coaches and the players. And our job behind the scenes is to support and give everything we can to help the group have success. We'll look at, I'll start with recruitment. In recruitment, we're going to add some scouts to our group. We lost Jamie Henderson, who had a great opportunity. We're going to replace that position. We will also improve our international recruitment and look to add some pieces there so we have people in market who are watching 30, 40 games a month, doing reports, looking at players. I think that's very important. We're also looking with Dave Tenney's department how we can improve medical and performance. He's been in the NBA. He's worked at clubs throughout MLS. I think he's one of the best in the business. And what we can do to maximize our performance, our health, making sure we are fit and ready to go at the start of the season.
Henry, getting to know Chris Henderson over the 2025 season, I think he has been wowed and very appreciative of the support from the fan base. So I'm not surprised by, trying to highlight their impact on what this can be and how important they are to what Atlanta United is, and trying to make them happy and reward them for the support that they give. I think the answer to Felipe's question about the sporting department, the part that stood out to me is getting more scouts in market. And I don't know exactly how that process has worked. We've talked to scouts before here on the SDH network and, kind of seen glimpses into the inner workings of that through material that the club has put out. But I'm not sure how many scouts they could say are on staff that are in other countries. I don't know if they would report to people. I'm not sure exactly how that would work. So it's interesting to highlight specifically the work of having people in market watching players that they are interested in. I think to get a better picture, and it kind of goes to some of the things we've talked about where spreadsheets will give you a picture of a player, but it might not be complete. And seeing that player up close, seeing how they train, how they respond to things, how they handle things in games that might not show up on a stat sheet. That's very important in terms of maximizing your spend and getting signings right. I think also, and it was a recurring conversation with Ronnie Dyla and seeing the injuries that this club dealt with this past year and players coming in various stages in the summer, coming in without a preseason, players playing 18 months and the effects that it took on Miguel Almiron and Latte Lat. I think trying to figure out how you can work with Dave Tenney's department, and now that he's had a year in the club and maybe has a better sense of what he would like to do long term, big picture, makes a lot of sense to try to upgrade there. And that's going to be important with young players as well coming through, making sure that they are being handled correctly, they are as fit as possible and ready to roll and try to prevent some of the injuries and disruptions that we have seen over the years. Because look, it's tough when you don't have that consistency in a lineup due to injury. Next question was about the kind of mix of ages in the team. You know, there had been a topic, and Ronnie Dyla had talked about it, of the team was too old. And I think that got corrected in the summer. And I think from having conversations with Ronnie, that was a little more specifically about the impact or lack thereof from guys like Derek Williams and Mateusz Klick and wanting to get younger. And I think they did with Enea Mikai and with Juan Bettercall and with Steven Alzate. You got younger in those positions. And I think when the conversation comes about getting younger, it's not about teenagers necessarily. It can be going from low 30s to mid to late 20s. Might be a 5-year difference, but that's a long time in football terms. So Chris Henderson talked about the balance that he wants in the team. And he also answered a question from Jose Prosopio of Latin Goles about kind of what he wants to see from this team. Here's 2 more answers from Chris Henderson.
I think there has to be a balance. I've seen it work with 3 different teams, and I've had a mix of all of it. I do think you need a balance of some young, fresh energy and players who can develop and come through. I'm very happy with the academy system and the players that Javier Perez and the players that are coming through, and they're not far off from training every day with the first team and breaking through. So that will give us some balance. But you also need some smart, cool heads who have the experience in big games that can help the young players along. I think, we want to be an exciting attacking team. I talked about gritty just now and mentality. Some games you have to grind out games, but I think we want to be a team that's high energy, that's attacking, that can counter press, that puts teams on their heels. In particular at home, with the advantage we have with our home crowd. And I think we need to take advantage of that in a better way and make this a really tough place to come and play. I don't feel like teams were afraid to play in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that needs to change.
Totally agree. You have to have a balance. If you have an entirely young team, then you don't have the mentors that the young players need. If you have an older team, you're going to have more injuries, you're going to have more breakdowns, and that can be tough as well. I think you need a balance and you need the buy-in from everybody across the board in those moments. Next question is from Madison Cruz about the coaching staff and kind of what things look like currently as you are still in the market for a new head coach.
Curious as well, with the obviously new head coach coming in, are we going to see some of the turnover from the coaching staff originally too, with Kenny and with Matt as well? Are they also going to stay involved as well, or is it going to be completely new?
Yeah, good question. We have let go of Kenny Miller, and we thank Ronnie, Kenny for the job that they did here, and the rest of that will be conversations we have with the new coaching staff and how they want to build their staff here.
So Robinson is still on staff?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the news there is that Kenny Miller departs the club. I really enjoyed getting to know Kenny on road trips and chatting with him when he did media. I think he's going to be a bright coach. I really want to see what is next for him in his future. I think he's a head coach down the line. I really think he is. I think he's got that kind of a personality. I liked watching him work with the group this season. Carl Robinson is a steady hand right now for where things are, kind of overseeing some off-season training, probably helping a lot with evaluation of players right now. I know Carl is somebody who has shared that he's looking at broadening his education on the side of things. Is he somebody who could be looking at chief soccer officer, front office kinds of roles? Is he somebody that could be looking, in different kinds of coaching roles? I think Carl has a lot to give this organization, or, if he moves on, depending on who comes in, what their coaching staff looks like. I think he's a good hand to have. And I think you're starting to see a few more coaching staffs be a blend, and maybe not an entire blend. A head coach might bring 2 or 3 people, but not everybody, as we've seen at times. When you built this club from scratch, you had to bring in a coaching staff from scratch. Gabriel Heinze brought in just about an entire staff. Others have brought in a couple people. Ronnie Dyla talked about it. He liked to have a mix. I think having at least 1 or 2 club people on a staff is very important, because you need that continuity in situations like this. Matt Lowry is one of those people, and Matt has fulfilled a number of different roles with Atlanta United. I would imagine that he would continue to do so no matter what happens with the next coaching staff. He was a valuable part of this coaching staff. I think he's been a valuable link for the young players coming through to become professionals because of his academy experience and just his background with these players. But he gets individual youth development and going from academy to second team to first team. He understands that in a way that very few do. He's a very valuable asset for Atlanta United, and I would imagine that he will continue to be that down the road. All right, next question's from me, asking just about the front office structure right now. Here's that exchange.
As you figure out these next steps with you and Demetrios and Skate right now on this side, what is the kind of support you're getting from ownership and from Rich McKay in guiding the process?
Yeah, good question. Skate, Demetrius, and myself, we report directly to Rich McKay. It's been for the last few months as we've been in charge of the sporting department and actually the entire organization. The communication's been ongoing, really supportive. The same, I would say, the same with ownership. Josh has been very involved. And they have the same goals we do. We're aligned in how we can make sure we're competitive every single game next season. So we will continue to have that communication back and forth and make sure we're taking the right steps to move forward.
Good to hear the support that Chris and Demetrios and Skate are getting from ownership, from Rich McKay. I think a lot of people, when Rich McKay's name came up as being involved as overseeing Atlanta United, when he initially moved into the role that he did with AMBSE, and when Garth Lagerwey stepped away due to health issues, people didn't really understand what that means. I think if you don't know Rich McKay's relationship with Arthur Blank, he's one of his most trusted people in the organization entirely in terms of what he does on the sports side. What Rich brings to the table on the sports side in this scenario, it's not about soccer specifically, but it's the things that we've talked about here and on the Atlanta Soccer Tonight. Rich McKay's been through coaching searches before. Rich McKay has been through regime changes. Rich McKay has decades upon decades of experience in professional sports. Those things are transferable from sport to sport. He is a very valuable person, I think, for Chris Henderson, for Demetrios Efstathiou, for Skate Nossinger right now, because he's experienced so much in the game, in their kinds of roles. He's had to figure things out in the way that they're having to figure things out right now. So I think Rich McKay can be very valuable to the Atlanta United side of things. And obviously, Arthur and Josh Blank are going to be critical to making all of this work, and their vision for what this is, and then that being executed with support from Rich McKay by Henderson, Efstathiou, and Nossinger. It's important to get that right going into 2026 and beyond. Next two answers are, one's a short one. Doug Robertson asked about Brad Gazan and what his future could look like and if there's any updates there. And the next one, you'll hear the second part of the question as part of the conversation with J. Sam Jones from Five Stripe Final. And here is a back and forth about the U22 roster spots.
I think Brad is going to have many opportunities come his way. We had Casey Keller retire in Seattle, and there's a lot of similarities to how well they did in their career, how good they are in media. But Brad has an intention to be in the front office, so we will work through each department. He can learn the league rules. He can learn how the processes work in each of the departments at the club. So I'm looking forward to having him. He's such a positive influence in this building. He knows the players. So we're excited to keep him around.
In recent years, the club has shied away from U22s. You do have the 2 open spots. Will those be utilized, and is there a particular profile of player you might look for in those spots?
Yeah, I think it is a position that a category that we're going to look at for next year. My past history with U22s in this league is you need a pretty good runway to make sure you're getting the right one. These are young players, sometimes going to a country they've never been before, leaving home. You need to really support those DPs and getting the right ones who can contribute right away. They might not have to start every single game, but you want to get them helping your team. So you're looking at what are the right positions for them, what are the right markets to bring them from, how can we support them when they do get here. But I think it's from a cap standpoint, it's a really valuable position in your roster.
I would love to see the U22 spots be used to maximum effect in 2026 and beyond. It is a little bit more of a gamble because any younger player that you sign, for example, if you sign a 20-year-old versus a 26-year-old versus a 32-year-old, you're going to have a different expectation for those players. I think it's harder to be right on the 20-year-old and the 32-year-old for very different reasons than it is the 26-year-old who's in the middle of their career, in their prime. You know who they are by that point. You have a reasonable expectation of what they will be over the next 4 to 6 years. 32-year-olds, you wonder about the body breaking down. You wonder where the motivations are as they get towards the end of their career. Different entirely. 20-year-olds, they're more unpredictable. You don't know if they have reached their ceiling, if they're still climbing, if they will be able to get to where you project them. There's more unknown. So you have to understand that. And the U22 spot can be a spot of a big investment. It is very cap friendly if you get it right, but it is riskier. I think there is a good opportunity here to find an attacker to complement the group with a U22 spot where you can gamble a little bit more, but hopefully your scouting and your connections come into play here. And that can be a very important thing in making this roster better. I do think as well down the line, maybe not yet, maybe down the road, a U22 spot being a second contract for a homegrown who has outgrown it, maybe isn't quite ready for a move to Europe or another bigger league, wants to stay around, and you can find a way to pay them more while keeping them cap friendly and keeping them happy. That's going to happen. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think that is a strategy down the road a little bit. Next up, another question from Madison Cruz about the importance of alignment between the head coach and the academy and utilizing those players that come through, those homegrowns. Here's the exchange.
Joe?
How important is it for you that the new head coach implements the academy players as well as the homegrowns within the first team when they're ready and able to?
Yeah, I mean, having homegrowns and utilizing the academy, we're investing in that every year. Arthur Blank and the club is investing in that, and we have done really well recently. The academy is doing well against traditional top academies in MLS. So we think we're in a really good position, and there is some really good players coming through that we want to make sure that we have an IDP coach who's working with them, and we have a plan for them, and we are also not blocking their pathway to come into the first team. I think that's really important. And knowing exactly when the right time for that person to come in. Sometimes you are thrown into it because of injuries and other things, and then you realize what a gem you have in your roster.
The next one is another exchange with me. I asked Chris about a little bit of his history in coaching changes, what that's looked like for him, what he's thought was important with it, and what he's learned and maybe evolved in the way he sees about building a team at this stage of his career. Here's my exchange with Chris
To
Henderson.
you real quick, Chris. The first one, how is the process for you? And I know the calendar is different from your previous experience, but helping first Brian Schmetzer get settled in Seattle and then helping Dr. Martino get settled in Miami, how have you kind of learned how to help a new coach get settled into an organization?
Yeah, the first one with Smetzer, I don't think he needed help getting settled in Seattle. Just that's his town, and he lives and breathes the Sounders. So I think the culture and everything he brought just continued. But first time in MLS as a head coach, he had been a head coach in previous years. So maybe there's a few nuances there. Tata Martino had coached in the league before, but it was about building trust early with a new coach and making sure they knew that everything behind him is to support what they need to do on the field. And how can you work together to maximize a season or multiple seasons together? So I do think it's about building trust. It's about showing the work and the processes that are behind the scenes. And I feel like this club, more than any club I've worked with, has really good processes and preparing for each year and each game. And then it's a matter of how we can translate that onto the field. But having a new coaching staff come in, one, it's exciting because it's new beginnings. You get new energy, and it's about how we can balance that energy off each other and everyone in the building.
Jose, and then we'll wrap on Doug.
I have one more, Chris.
Oh, sorry, just go.
How has this past season kind of changed the way that you see building a team in this league?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say in 30 seasons in this league, it was the hardest season I've ever had. It's not fun to lose games. And I think I look at the lessons from this year. Many games we were tight. And in this league, there are subtle things that can happen in a game. It's one play sometimes. It's a call against you that can happen. There's little things that can happen that can make the difference between a good season and a poor season. And I realize that confidence is so important among a group of players. And sometimes you're in seasons and the forwards are miskicking balls and everything's going in. And you don't know why. And you got to ride that as long as you can. And then there's other times where you feel like it's all against you. So I think it's working with players in a belief in themselves. And many times that goes into a system that they believe in and playing in each of their positions, knowing what their roles are, being very specific that in these instances, these are your options that you have. And that is over time, and it's a belief. The best teams that I've been part of as a player and coach and management have been teams that have a really strong bond with each other on and off the field. And that's what we got to work on.
Jose?
I really enjoy talking philosophy and process with Chris because I think he gets it. I think he's extremely thoughtful about how these things work, highlighting the importance of building trust with a new manager quickly. It's very important. I think that's very illuminating about what Atlanta United can do next. That is something that will need to be correct. Can you work together to maximize if it's a short term or a longer term so that person can be as successful as possible that you expect they will be by hiring them? The other aspect of it that I thought was interesting is how he got into something that we talked about a lot on SDH, something we talked about a lot on 92.9 The Game, and in our conversations about what was right, what was wrong with Atlanta United in 2025. Self-confidence, confidence of players. I thought it was fascinating that when I asked him what maybe has changed in terms of how he sees building a team, and he talked about confidence being so important among a group of players. I agree. I think that was a huge issue this past season. And it's a really tough thing to define and affect and change. And it's something that I think we're all starting to learn a little bit more about in professional sports. It's something that I will be curious to see how the club can try to affect that going forward. And he talked about the bond between the group and how important that is. And maybe that's been highlighted a little bit more. Totally agree. Really interesting conversation at the tail end of the press conference today with me and Chris Henderson. And I wanted to have this last clip so you hear it directly from Chris about where things stand on the interview process currently for the head coach job. Here is Chris's answer to Doug Robertson.
Can you say how many interviewees there are for the managerial job?
Yeah, I would say it's, let's say, half a dozen will be in the final group. But we've had conversations with. Wow, we've had many conversations.
He said, "Let's say a half dozen." So maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7, maybe it's somewhere in there. Maybe he's being very literal. I'm not sure. It's more than what's out there. Right now, what's been reported is Tata Martino and Giovanni Savarese as the 2 names. There'd been talk about other interviews going on even yesterday. Don't know who those other names could be. Have not seen anything as of yet. Didn't run into anybody coming out of the building today. So we will see. But yes, there are things happening. Hopefully there will be a decision soon. He said that would be the final group, a half dozen. He said, let's say a half dozen. A lot of conversations. So a lot of other names have either been considered or talked to in maybe more of an informal way. This hopefully will get done soon. It is not something that should be rushed for the sake of rushing it. It is a very important step for Atlanta United as they prepare for the 2026 season. We will be here to tell you the stories all along the way of what that process is going to look like here on the SDH Network. Thanks for watching another Front Office Dispatch with Chris Henderson, with questions from Atlanta media, and presented, as always, by our friends at Kaiser Permanente. Have a good rest of the day. We'll be talking soon.